The scent of vanilla and cheap ambition still clung to Adrian's collar, a souvenir from a bed that wasn't his own. He thought the hardest part of his night was over. The lies, the driving, the sneaking back into his suburban fortress. He was wrong. The silence in his house wasn't peaceful. It was a predator waiting to strike. When he walked into the master bedroom, the bed wasn't just empty. It was perfectly, terrifyingly made. And there, under the cold glow of the vanity light, sat the only two things his wife had left behind: a pair of diamond earrings he thought she loved, and a letter that would dismantle his entire existence. This wasn't a breakup. It was an execution. The rain in Seattle didn't wash things clean. It just made the grime slicker. It was 2:14 a.m. when Adrian Sterling pulled his matte black Audi into the driveway of 42 Oakwood Drive. The wipers slapped a rhythmic, hypnotic beat against the windshield, a metronome counting down seconds he didn't know were numbered. Adrian turned off the ignition and sat in the dark for a moment. He exhaled, watching his breath fog the glass. He reached up, adjusting the rearview mirror to check his neck. No lipstick marks, no scratches. Just the flushed skin of a man who had spent the last 4 hours in an apartment in Capitol Hill, tangling sheets with Felicity Hart. Felicity was 24, an interior design intern at his architecture firm, and possessed the kind of chaotic energy that made Adrian feel 25 again, rather than 42. She was the adrenaline shot to his routine life. He checked his phone one last time. A text from Felicity. "Already missing your hands. Don't let the bed bugs bite." He deleted the thread. Then he deleted the call log. Then he opened his calculator app, typed in a specific code, and checked the hidden photo vault, ensuring nothing had autosaved to the cloud. Adrian Sterling was a meticulous man. He was the lead architect for the new Skyline project downtown. He built structures that defied gravity. He knew how to build a life that defied scrutiny. He stepped out of the car, shielding his head with his briefcase as he jogged to the front porch. The house, a sprawling, mid-century modern restoration that had been featured in Architectural Digest, loomed dark and silent. Usually the porch light was on. Sarah always left the porch light on. Adrian frowned, fumbling for his keys. The sensory memory of Felicity's apartment, the smell of vanilla candles and white wine, was instantly replaced by the sterile, damp air of the suburbs. He unlocked the door and stepped inside, disarming the security system with a practiced beep, beep, beep. "Sarah," he whispered, more out of habit than necessity. Silence. Not the comfortable silence of a sleeping house, where the refrigerator hums and the floorboards settle. This was a heavy, vacuum-sealed silence. It felt like walking into a museum after closing hours. He slipped off his shoes, placing them precisely on the mat. He prided himself on being a considerate husband, even when he was cheating. He didn't track Mud in. He didn't wake her up. He was a good guy who just happened to have needs that Sarah, with her books and her quiet teas and her obsession with gardening, couldn't meet. He walked through the hallway, loosening his tie. He passed the living room. The moonlight filtered through the sheer curtains, illuminating the furniture. Everything looked normal. The grand piano sat in the corner, the lid closed. The stack of magazines on the coffee table was squared away. But as he reached the bottom of the stairs, a strange sensation pricked the back of his neck. The thermostat. The house was cold, freezing actually. Sarah was perpetually cold. She kept the house at a tropical 72 degrees, even in summer. Adrian glanced at the Nest thermostat on the wall. It was set to 55. "What the hell?" he muttered, tapping the glass. The system was in away mode. A flicker of annoyance flared in his chest. Did the power go out? Did she mess with the settings again? He trudged up the stairs, the carpet muffling his footsteps. He was tired. He just wanted to shower the smell of felicity off his skin, crawl into bed next to his wife, and sleep the sleep of the self-righteous. He reached the landing. The door to the master suite was ajar. "Sarah, did you touch the heat?" he called out, his voice a low grumble. "It's freezing in here." He pushed the door open. The master bedroom was bathed in the harsh, blue light of the street lamp outside. Adrian reached for the dimmer switch and brought the recessed lighting up to a soft glow. He stopped dead. The bed was made. It wasn't just made. It was military grade. The duvet was pulled taut, the pillows stacked with precision. No indentation of a body. No discarded book on the nightstand. No glass of water. Adrian looked at the digital clock, 2:22 a.m. Panic, cold and sharp, finally pierced his arrogance. Where is she? His mind raced through logical explanations. Emergency. Did her mother in Portland get sick? Did she get called into the hospital? Sarah was a pediatric nurse, but she hadn't worked night shifts in 3 years. "Sarah," he said, louder this time. He checked the ensuite bathroom. Empty. The shower was bone dry. The towels were folded and hung perfectly. He walked back into the bedroom, his heart rate beginning to sync with the ticking clock. That's when he saw it. The vanity table. Sarah's vanity was usually a cluttered landscape of serums, hairbrushes, and jewelry trays. Now it was completely bare. Except for 2 things. Sitting dead center on the polished mahogany surface was a small black velvet box, and next to it, a cream-colored envelope with a single word written in Sarah's elegant, looping cursive. Adrian. Adrian approached the vanity slowly, as if the envelope were a bomb. The air in the room felt thin, insufficient to fill his lungs. He looked at the black velvet box first. He didn't need to open it to know what it was, but he did anyway. He flipped the lid. Inside, nesting in white satin, lay the diamond teardrop earrings. A lump formed in his throat, tasting of bile. He had given those to Sarah 2 months ago for their 15th wedding anniversary. They had cost him $12,000. He remembered the dinner at the Pink Door, the way her eyes had welled up with tears when he put them on her. She had told him they were the most beautiful things she owned. She had told him he was the most generous man in the world. But looking at them now, glistening under the artificial light, Adrian felt a wave of nausea. Because there was a secret attached to those earrings. He hadn't bought them for Sarah, not originally. He had bought an identical pair for Felicity 3 months ago. Sarah had found the receipt in his jacket pocket, a rookie mistake. But Adrian, quick on his feet, had spun a masterful lie. He claimed he had bought them early for the anniversary and was hiding them at the office so she wouldn't peek. He had been forced to go back to the jeweler, buy a second pair to present to Sarah, and pretend the surprise had been ruined, but the gift was genuine. He thought he had dodged a bullet. He thought he was a genius. Now the earrings sat there like an accusation. "I know," they seemed to say. "I always knew." His hand trembled as he reached for the letter. The paper was heavy, expensive cardstock. Sarah never used cheap stationery. He tore the envelope open. There was no date. "Adrian, by the time you read this, I will be crossing state lines. Don't bother tracking my phone. I left it in the Uber that dropped me at the airport. It's probably circling downtown Seattle right now. You're probably confused. You're probably tired. I imagine you smell like vanilla. That's Felicity's signature scent, isn't it? Madagascar vanilla from Sephora. It's sweet. A little too sweet for a man of your age, but I suppose that's the point." Adrian's knees gave out. He sat heavily on the small ottoman in front of the vanity. The letter shook in his hands. You thought you were so clever, Adrian. The late nights at the firm, the emergency site visits, the second phone you keep taped under the bottom drawer of your desk in the study. Yes, I know about the phone. I know the passcode is your mother's birthday. 0412. I've known for 6 months, since the day you bought those earrings. Do you remember that day? You came home and told me you bought them for our anniversary. You looked me in the eye and lied with such ease, such practiced charm, that it actually broke my heart more than the cheating did. It made me realize that our entire marriage, the life I built around you, was just a structure you designed to house your ego. I didn't leave immediately because I'm not impulsive, Adrian. I'm a planner. You taught me that. Measure twice, cut once, you always say to your contractors. Well, I've been measuring for half a year. Adrian stopped reading. He stood up, hyperventilating. No, he whispered. No, no, no. He ran to the walk-in closet. He threw the double doors open. It was gutted. Her side of the closet was empty. The designer dresses, the coats, the shoes, gone. But then he looked at his side. His suits were still there. His shirts were color-coded. But the safe, the floor safe in the back corner of the closet, was wide open. Adrian dropped to his knees and scrambled inside the closet. He peered into the dark metal cavern of the safe. Empty. The emergency cash, $50,000 in banded hundreds, was gone. The gold bullion he had been stockpiling as a hedge against inflation, gone. The Patek Philippe watches he had inherited from his father, gone. Her passport, gone. His passport, gone. He scrambled back to the letter, snatching it up from the ottoman. He needed to see how bad this was. I didn't just take my things, Adrian. I took what I was owed. We live in a community property state, and considering the evidence of adultery I've compiled, audio recordings, photos, text logs from that second phone, I think a judge would agree that I'm entitled to a significant advance on the settlement. But don't worry about the divorce papers. You won't be served by a lawyer. You'll be hearing from the authorities first. Authorities? Adrian choked out the word. The room spun. What was she talking about? He was a cheater, sure, but that wasn't a crime. You see, while you were busy with Felicity, you stopped paying attention to the details of your own business. You stopped checking the joint accounts. You stopped looking at the tax filings I prepared for you to sign. You just signed them. Do you remember the Project Omega offshore account you asked me to set up 3 years ago? The one you used to funnel the kickbacks from the construction contracts? You told me it was a legal tax loophole. I did some reading. It's not a loophole, Adrian. It's embezzlement and tax evasion. Federal crimes. I liquidated the account this morning. All of it. $2.4 million. Adrian felt the blood drain from his face, leaving him cold and clammy. But I didn't steal it. I wouldn't do that. I simply transferred it to the IRS in your name as a voluntary disclosure of past errors, along with a full confession letter signed by you. What? Adrian screamed, the sound tearing from his throat. Well, it looks like your signature. I've had 15 years to practice it. So, the money is gone. The government knows what you did. And by tomorrow morning, the partners at your firm will know too. I CC'd them on the email. Enjoy the house, Adrian. It's the only thing you have left, and the mortgage is due on the 1st. Goodbye. Sarah. P.S. I flushed the other earring down the toilet. The one Felicity has is fake. I swapped it out of the box before you gave it to her. Cubic zirconia turns green when it gets wet. You might want to warn her. Adrian stared at the letter. The silence of the house rushed back in, louder than before. It wasn't just a quiet house anymore. It was a tomb. He scrambled for his phone. He had to call the bank. He had to call his lawyer. He had to call... His phone buzzed in his hand. It wasn't Felicity. It was a notification from his home security app. Motion detected. Garage. Then, the sound of a car engine starting. Not his car. Adrian froze. Sarah said she was already crossing state lines. Sarah said she took an Uber. If Sarah was gone, who was in the garage? The sound of the engine in the garage wasn't a roar. It was a purr. A low, throaty rumble that vibrated through the floorboards of the master bedroom and straight into the soles of Adrian's feet. It was the sound of German engineering. It was the sound of his 1969 Porsche 911S. His Porsche. The one he had restored bolt by bolt over 5 years. The one he treated better than he treated his wife. Adrian scrambled off the floor, the letter crumpling in his fist. He didn't care about the dignity of his suit or the fact that he was hyperventilating. He sprinted into the hallway, his socks slipping on the polished hardwood. He nearly careened into the wall as he took the stairs 2 at a time, the adrenaline finally overriding the shock. "Hey!" he screamed at the empty house. "Hey!" He tore through the kitchen, knocking a heavy crystal vase of lilies off the island. It shattered, sending water and glass skittering across the tiles. But Adrian didn't stop. He hit the door to the garage and threw it open. The garage was flooded with fluorescent light and the acrid, sweet smell of high-octane gasoline. The Porsche was already backing out. The garage door was fully raised, revealing the black void of the driveway and the misty Seattle night beyond. Adrian lunged for the driver's side door. "Stop! Stop the car!" The car braked hard, the tires chirping on the epoxy floor. Adrian grabbed the handle, ready to rip the thief out, and beat him within an inch of his life. He wrenched the door open. "Get out!" Adrian roared. The driver turned to look at him slowly. It wasn't a thief in a ski mask. It wasn't the police. It was Ethan, Sarah's younger brother. Ethan was wearing a heavy wool peacoat and a mariner's baseball cap. He looked calm, almost bored. He didn't look like a man stealing a car. He looked like a man running an errand. "Ethan?" Adrian blinked, his brain failing to process the image. "What the hell are you doing? Get out of my car!" Ethan looked Adrian up and down, his eyes lingering on Adrian's disheveled tie and the frantic sweat beading on his forehead. "Your car?" Ethan asked, his voice flat. "I don't think so, Adrian." "I restored this car," Adrian spat, reaching in to grab Ethan's shoulder. "I paid for every part in this engine. Get out before I call the cops." Ethan didn't flinch. He simply held up a piece of paper in his left hand. It was a pink slip, a vehicle title. "You really didn't pay attention to the paperwork, did you?" Ethan said, a cruel smirk playing on his lips. "You bought the chassis 6 years ago. Sarah wrote the check because your credit was tied up in that failed condo project in Bellevue. Remember? You put the title in her name to protect the asset from your creditors." Adrian froze. The memory clawed its way back. The Bellevue disaster. He had needed to hide assets. He had trusted Sarah to hold them. He had never transferred the title back. "She signed it over to me yesterday," Ethan said, tucking the title back into his coat pocket. "Sold it to me for $1. It's a legal sale, Adrian. I have the bill of sale right here on the passenger seat." "This is theft," Adrian hissed, though the conviction was draining out of his voice. "This is conspiracy." "No," Ethan corrected him. "This is karma." Ethan leaned closer, the smell of peppermint gum masking the gasoline fumes. "Sarah told me everything, Adrian. About the intern, about the apartment in Capitol Hill, about how you made her feel small for 15 years. Adrian stepped back, releasing the door handle. He felt exposed, naked under the harsh garage lights. "It's complicated, Ethan. You don't know the whole story. I know enough, Ethan said. I know you missed our mother's funeral last year because you had a client emergency. Sarah found the hotel receipt from that weekend. You were in Napa with some blonde named Jessica. Adrian's mouth opened, but no sound came out. That was 2 mistresses ago. He hadn't even realized Sarah knew about Jessica. Sarah is gone, Adrian, Ethan said, his voice dropping to a whisper. And she's not coming back. She's safe. She's far away. And she gave me strict instructions. Instructions? To take the Porsche, Ethan said, revving the engine slightly. And to give you this. Ethan reached into the passenger seat and picked up a heavy, sealed manila envelope. He tossed it out of the car. It landed on the garage floor with a wet slap near Adrian's feet. What is that? Adrian asked, staring at the envelope. Divorce papers, Ethan said, and a restraining order. Don't try to find her. If you come within 500 feet of her, or me, or my parents, I'll have you arrested. And considering the little tax situation Sarah mentioned, I don't think you want any more attention from the law. Ethan grabbed the door handle and slammed the Porsche door shut. The sound echoed like a gunshot. Ethan, wait! Adrian stepped forward, desperation seizing him. Where is she? Just tell me she's okay. Ethan didn't answer. He threw the car into reverse. The tires gripped the driveway, and the vintage car shot backward into the night. He spun the wheel, shifted into first, and roared away down Oakwood Drive, the red tail lights disappearing into the mist. Adrian stood alone in the garage. The air was cold and damp. The space where the Porsche had sat for 5 years was now an empty rectangle of grey concrete, stained with a few drops of oil. He looked down at the manila envelope. It lay in a puddle of water that had dripped from the car's exhaust. He didn't pick it up immediately. He couldn't. His legs finally gave way, and he sank to the cold concrete floor of the garage. He sat there, a 42-year-old man in a $3,000 suit, hugging his knees like a child. The silence of the house had been terrifying, but the silence of the empty garage was worse. It was the silence of a man who had just realized that his possessions were the only things that had defined him. And now, even those were stripping themselves away. He looked at his watch. 3:05 a.m. The banks wouldn't open for another 6 hours. The firm wouldn't open for another 5. He was trapped in the longest night of his life. Adrian eventually crawled out of the garage. He locked the door, a pointless gesture considering the fortress had already been breached from the inside, and carried the damp manila envelope into the kitchen. He didn't open it. He threw it onto the marble island next to the shattered vase. He needed a drink. He went to the liquor cabinet in the living room. He reached for the bottle of Macallan 25, his prize possession, the bottle he saved for closing million-dollar contracts. It was gone. The shelf wasn't empty, though. In its place stood a bottle of cheap grocery store brand vodka. Attached to the neck was a yellow sticky note. Budget cuts. S. Adrian let out a strangled, hysterical laugh. She had been thorough. My God, she had been thorough. He grabbed the cheap vodka, unscrewed the cap, and took a long pull straight from the bottle. It burned like gasoline, making his eyes water. But the burn grounded him. He needed to think. He needed to assess the damage. He carried the bottle into his home office. This was his sanctuary. Dark wood paneling, leather chairs, and his dual monitor setup where he designed skyscrapers. He sat in his Herman Miller chair and woke the computer. The blue light of the screens illuminated his face, casting deep shadows under his eyes. His hands trembled as he typed in his password. Access denied. Adrian frowned. He retyped it. Architect 2. Access denied. A cold sweat broke out on his neck. Sarah didn't know his computer password. He changed it every month. There was no way she could have locked him out of his own local machine. Unless... He looked at the webcam mounted on top of the monitor. The tiny green light was on. Someone was watching? No, it was worse. He realized he was trying to log into his work profile. The computer was connected to the firm's server. If his access had been revoked at the server level, he wouldn't be able to log in. He disconnected the Ethernet cable with a shaking hand. He restarted the computer in safe mode, bypassing the network login. The desktop appeared. He immediately opened a browser and connected to the Wi-Fi. He had to check the bank accounts. He went to the Wells Fargo portal. He typed in his username and password. Account locked due to suspicious activity. Please contact 1-800. He tried Chase. Same message. He tried American Express. Card cancelled. He slammed his fist onto the desk, rattling the keyboard. Damn it! She hadn't just taken the money. She had flagged the accounts. She must have triggered every fraud alert in the system before she left. She had frozen him out of his own life. He remembered the email, the one she said she sent to the partners. He opened his personal Gmail. His inbox was usually full of spam and newsletters. Tonight, it was ominously quiet. He went to the sent folder. There it was. Time-stamped 8:00 a.m. yesterday morning. A scheduled send. She had set it up to go out while he was at work, unaware. Subject: formal confession and resignation. Adrian Sterling. To borderstilling.vancearch.com. IRS whistleblower.ders.gov. CC. Sarah Sterling eggmail.com. Adrian felt like he was going to vomit. His finger hovered over the mouse. He didn't want to open it. If he didn't open it, maybe it wasn't real. He clicked. To the Board of Directors and the Internal Revenue Service, my name is Adrian Sterling. I am writing this to formally confess to a systematic embezzlement scheme I have been running through the Skyline project accounts over the past 36 months. Attached to this email, you will find a folder containing 1. PDF copies of the altered invoices from Omega Construction Supply, a shell company I created. 2. Bank transfer logs showing the movement of funds from the firm to my offshore account in the Caymans. 3. Audio recordings of myself instructing my contractor on how to inflate material costs to cover the difference. I take full responsibility for these actions. I am liquidating the offshore assets immediately to begin restitution to the IRS. I understand this ends my career. I am deeply sorry for the betrayal. Sincerely, Adrian Sterling. Adrian slumped back in his chair. The room spun. Audio recordings? He whispered. He clicked the attachment labeled Audio Evidence Dozo Juan. MP3. His own voice filled the room, tinny and clear. Look, just bump the concrete order by 15%. Nobody checks the cubic yardage on the foundation pour. It's buried underground. Put the extra 50 grand in the Omega account by Friday. Adrian remembered that conversation. He had taken it in his car, in the Audi. Sarah must have bugged the car. He sat there for a long time, the silence of the room pressing in on him. He was done. It wasn't just a divorce. It wasn't just bankruptcy. This was prison, federal prison. The amounts she was talking about, millions, carried mandatory minimum sentences. He looked at the clock. 4:45 a.m. The sun was beginning to grey the sky outside the window. He needed an ally. He needed someone on his side. He grabbed his phone. He hesitated, then dialed Felicity. He knew it was early, but he needed to hear her voice. He needed to know that someone still wanted him. He needed the fantasy, even if the reality was crumbling. The phone rang 4 times. Hello? Her voice was groggy, thick with sleep. Felicity, Adrian breathed, gripping the phone tight. It's me. Adrian. There was a rustling of sheets. It's 5 in the morning. What's wrong? Did you leave something? Everything is wrong, Adrian said, his voice cracking. Sarah, she knows. She left. She took everything. There was a pause on the other end. She knows. Like, about us. Yes. She emptied the house. She stole the money. Felicity, she destroyed me. He waited for the sympathy. He waited for her to say, come over, or we'll get through this. Instead, there was a sharp intake of breath. Wait, Felicity said, her voice changing. It wasn't sleepy anymore. It was sharp. You said she took everything? Yes. The accounts, the cash. Adrian, Felicity said slowly, I took a shower after you left. What? I took a shower. I wore the earrings, the diamond ones you gave me. Adrian closed his eyes. He knew what was coming. They turned green, Adrian, Felicity spat. The metal turned my earlobes green. And the diamonds, the steam made them fog up. Real diamonds don't fog up. Felicity, listen. I took them out and looked at the back, she interrupted, her voice rising in pitch. It says CZ'd stamped on the post, cubic zirconia. I can explain, Adrian pleaded. Sarah swapped them. She switched the boxes. I bought you real ones, I swear. You bought me real ones? Felicity laughed, a harsh, cruel sound. Or did you give the real ones to your wife and give me the props? You cheap bastard. No, Felicity, please, I'm in trouble. The firm, the IRS. The IRS? Felicity's voice went cold. Adrian, if the IRS is involved, do not call me. Do not text me. I am an intern. I have a career to think about. I am not going down as an accessory to whatever mess you made. Felicity, I love you. You love yourself, she snapped. And you don't even have good taste in jewelry. Don't call me again. Click. The line went dead. Adrian lowered the phone from his ear. He looked at the screen. The background wallpaper was a photo of him and Felicity in bed, laughing. He stared at it until the screen went black. He was completely alone. The sun finally broke over the horizon, casting a pale judgment light into the office. The dust motes danced in the air, swirling around him. Suddenly his phone buzzed again. He jumped, hope flaring in his chest. Felicity calling back? Sarah changing her mind? He looked at the caller ID. It wasn't a name. It was a number he recognized. It was the direct line to the senior partner of his firm, Marcus Vance. And then, a second buzz, a notification from his security app. Motion detected. Front porch. Adrian stood up and walked to the window. He peered through the blinds. A black sedan was parked at the curb. Two men in dark windbreakers were walking up the driveway. On the back of their jackets, in bold yellow letters, was a single acronym. FBI. Adrian looked at the cheap vodka bottle. He took one last, long swig. He didn't bother putting his shoes back on. He walked to the front door, the marble cold against his socks, to answer the bell that was about to ring. The doorbell didn't ring. It wasn't that kind of visit. Instead, there was a heavy, authoritative knock that rattled the frosted glass insert of the front door. 3 sharp raps. Boom, boom, boom. Adrian stood in the hallway, his socks gripping the cold marble. He looked down at his clothes. He was still wearing his suit trousers, now wrinkled and stained with garage oil, and his white dress shirt, unbuttoned at the collar, cuffs hanging loose. He looked like a man who had been dismantled. He opened the door. The morning air was crisp, carrying the scent of damp pine and the neighbor's dryer sheets. 2 men stood on the porch. They looked remarkably ordinary. No sunglasses, no guns drawn, just ill-fitting windbreakers and tired eyes. Adrian Sterling? The older one asked. He had a grey buzz cut and a face that looked like it had been carved out of granite. Yes, Adrian said. His voice sounded small, like a child confessing to a broken window. "I'm Special Agent Miller, FBI. This is Agent Park. We have a warrant for your arrest regarding wire fraud, tax evasion, and conspiracy to commit money laundering." Adrian nodded. He didn't fight. He didn't run. The fight had left him hours ago, somewhere between the empty safe and the dial tone of Felicity's phone. "Turn around, please," Agent Park said softly. Adrian turned. The sensation of the handcuffs was shocking. They were heavy, colder than the air, and the metal bit into the delicate skin of his wrists. The click, click, click of the ratchets tightening echoed off the stone facade of his house. Can I get my shoes?" Adrian asked, staring at his socked feet. "We'll get them for you at the station," Miller said. "Let's go." They walked him down the driveway. The walk felt miles long. To his left, Mrs. Higgins, the 70-year-old widow who lived at number 44, was standing on her porch with her morning coffee. She was wearing a floral robe. She had always loved Sarah. Sarah had brought her soup when she had the flu. Sarah had helped her prune her hydrangeas. Mrs. Higgins locked eyes with Adrian. She didn't look confused. She didn't look scared. She looked at the handcuffs, then at Adrian's face, and she took a slow sip of her coffee. Her expression was one of grim satisfaction. She knew. Somehow, the whole world already knew. They guided him into the back of the sedan. The seat was hard plastic, molded for easy cleaning. There were no door handles on the inside. As the car pulled away, Adrian turned his head to look at his house one last time. The morning sun was hitting the large bay windows, the windows he had designed to capture the perfect amount of natural light. It was a beautiful structure, a masterpiece of modern architecture. But without Sarah, it was just a pile of wood and glass, and now it was a crime scene. The interrogation room. The room was smaller than his walk-in closet. It smelled of stale coffee and industrial cleaner. There was a metal table bolted to the floor and a two-way mirror that hummed with a low electric buzz. Adrian sat on the metal chair, his hands cuffed to a metal loop in the table. He had been there for 3 hours. He hadn't said a word. The door opened. Agent Miller walked in, carrying a thick binder. He dropped it onto the table with a thud that made Adrian flinch. "You have the right to an attorney," Miller said, sitting down. "You know the drill. You want to wait for a public defender. Because your assets are frozen, Mr. Sterling. You can't afford private counsel right now." I want to talk," Adrian whispered. "I want to explain." "Explain what?" Miller opened the binder. He flipped through pages of bank statements, emails, and photos. "Explain how Omega Construction billed your firm for 300 tons of steel that never existed? Or explain why the IP address used to transfer the funds matches the Wi-Fi at a luxury apartment in Capitol Hill leased to a Ms. Felicity Hart?" Adrian closed his eyes. Sarah hadn't just given them the offshore account. She had given them Felicity too. "Your wife," Miller said, his voice taking on a conversational tone, "is a very organized woman, Adrian. I've been doing this for 20 years, and I have never seen a whistleblower package this complete. She categorized the evidence by fiscal quarter. She even used color-coded sticky notes." Miller slid a photo across the table. It was a picture of Adrian and Felicity at a restaurant in Vancouver, taken 6 months ago. They were holding hands across the table. "She hired a private investigator last year," Miller said. "She waited. She let you dig the hole deeper and deeper. Every time you stole money to buy your mistress a gift, Sarah logged it. Every time you falsified an invoice to cover a weekend trip, Sarah made a copy." Adrian stared at the photo. He looked so happy in it, so arrogant. He looked like a man who thought he was untouchable. "She didn't just want a divorce, Adrian," Miller said, leaning in. She wanted to burn your world down, and you handed her the matches. Where is she? Adrian asked, his voice cracking. Is she okay? Miller closed the binder. He looked at Adrian with a mixture of pity and disgust. She's in the wind, Mr. Sterling, and honestly, if I were you, I wouldn't be looking for her. I'd be worrying about the fact that the United States Attorney is looking for a 15-year sentence. 15 years. The words hung in the air, heavy and suffocating. Adrian looked at his reflection in the two-way mirror. He looked old. The grey hairs he usually dyed were showing at the roots. The lines around his eyes were deep trenches. He wasn't the brilliant architect anymore. He was a statistic. 3 months later, the King County Correctional Facility was nothing like the buildings Adrian designed. There was no natural light. There were no open concepts. It was a brutalist nightmare of concrete, fluorescent buzzing, and the smell of hundreds of men living in close quarters, a cocktail of sweat, bleach, and despair. Adrian sat on the edge of his bunk. His orange jumpsuit was 2 sizes too big. He had lost 20 pounds. The food was inedible, a grey slop that tasted of salt and preservatives. But that wasn't why he wasn't eating. It was the shame. It was a physical weight in his stomach, a stone that he swallowed every morning and couldn't digest. "Sterling! Legal!" a guard shouted, banging a baton against the bars. Adrian stood up slowly. He shuffled to the cell door, presenting his wrists for the cuffs through the slot. He was used to the routine now. The humiliation had become mundane. He was led down a long, echoing corridor to the visitation rooms. He sat behind a thick plexiglass shield. On the other side sat a man he had met only 3 times. David Klein, his court-appointed public defender. Klein was young, harried, and wore a suit that looked like it had been slept in. He wasn't the high-powered shark Adrian would have hired in his previous life. He was just a guy trying to clear his caseload. "Good morning, Adrian," Klein said, opening his briefcase. He didn't smile. There was nothing to smile about. "What's the news, David?" Adrian asked. He picked up the black telephone receiver. It was greasy against his ear. "The DA isn't budging on the plea," Klein said, shuffling papers. "They have everything. The audio tapes were the nail in the coffin. The jury will hear your voice directing the fraud. It's indefensible. So, what's the offer?" 8 years, Klein said. "Minimum security if you're lucky. But with the amount of money involved, over 2 million, they want restitution. They're seizing everything. The house, the cars, the 401k. "The house is already gone," Adrian muttered. The bank had foreclosed last month. He had heard about it from a guard who saw it on the news. "Scandal house for sale," the headline had read. "There is one other thing," Klein said. He pulled a separate envelope out of his briefcase. It wasn't a legal document. It was a thick, cream-colored envelope. Adrian's heart stopped. He knew that stationery. "This came to my office yesterday," Klein said. "Addressed to you, care of me. It's from a lawyer in Zurich." "Zurich?" Adrian frowned. "Open it." Klein slid the envelope through the narrow slot at the bottom of the glass. Adrian's hands trembled as he picked it up. He tore the seal. Inside was a single photograph and a typed note. The photograph was of Sarah. She was sitting at a cafe table. In the background, snow-capped mountains rose against a piercing blue sky. The Swiss Alps. She was wearing a thick white coat he had never seen before. Her hair was cut short, a stylish bob that framed her face. She wasn't wearing her wedding ring. She was smiling. Not the polite, tight-lipped smile she had worn for the last 5 years of their marriage. This was a genuine smile. Her eyes were crinkled at the corners. She looked 5 years younger. She looked free. Adrian flipped the photo over. On the back, in her familiar script, was a date. 2 weeks ago. He unfolded the note. Adrian, my lawyer tells me you're looking at 8 years. By the time you get out, you'll be 50. A difficult age to start over, but not impossible. I wanted you to see this photo. Not to be cruel, but to show you what you bought me. You see, I didn't give the IRS all the money. Adrian stopped reading. His breath hitched. The Project Omega account had $2.4 million. I sent the IRS $2 million, the remaining $400,000. I kept it. Consider it my consulting fee for managing your books all these years, or perhaps consider it the price of the earrings you never gave me. I'm in Europe now. I've always wanted to live near the mountains. You hated the cold, remember? You always wanted the heat, the beach, the younger women. I hope Felicity visits you, though I heard she was fired from the firm the day after your arrest. I also heard she's dating a 25-year-old tech promoter in Bellevue now. Life moves fast, doesn't it? Don't look for me. I'm not Sarah Sterling anymore. I went back to my maiden name, and then I changed that too. Goodbye, Adrian. S. Adrian lowered the letter. A laugh bubbled up in his chest, a dark, jagged thing. She had played him. She had played the FBI. She had played everyone. She had kept a nest egg, just enough to start a new life, and she had framed it so perfectly that no one would ever look for it. She was the architect now. She had designed the perfect exit. Adrian? Klein asked, looking concerned. You okay? Adrian looked at the photo of his wife one last time. The woman he had ignored, the woman he had underestimated, the woman he had cheated on because he thought she was boring. She was the smartest person he had ever met. I'm fine, Adrian said, his voice hollow. I'm just realizing something. What's that? That I deserve this, Adrian said. He placed the photo face down on the metal ledge. I deserve every single day of those 8 years. He looked up at the lawyer. Where do I sign? The cell. That night, lying in the dark, Adrian didn't sleep. He stared at the concrete ceiling. He thought about the vanilla scent of Felicity's apartment, and how sickeningly sweet it seemed in his memory now. He thought about the diamond earrings, probably sitting in a police evidence locker somewhere, cold and useless. He had spent his life building skyscrapers, obsessing over the height, the facade, the way they looked to the world. He had neglected the foundation. And when the foundation cracked, the whole tower didn't just fall. It pulverized. He rolled over on the thin mattress, pulling the scratchy wool blanket up to his chin. For the first time in 20 years, Adrian Sterling cried. He didn't cry for his money. He didn't cry for his freedom. He cried because he finally understood that the farewell note on the vanity wasn't a tragedy. It was a liberation. For her. And for him, it was just the bill coming due. 8 years, 4 months, and 12 days. That was the exact amount of time the state of Washington had taken from Adrian Sterling. When he walked out of the prison gates on a grey Tuesday in November, there was no one waiting for him. No Audi with heated seats, no Felicity with a fake smile, just the damp chill of the Pacific Northwest and a bus ticket to a halfway house in Tacoma. Adrian was 50 years old now, but he looked 60. The hairline that had been receding was now gone, leaving him bald and exposed. His posture, once erect with the arrogance of a man who commanded job sites, was now stooped, curved by years of sleeping on a thin cot and looking at the floor to avoid trouble. He found work. It wasn't in architecture. His license had been permanently revoked, and his name was poison in the industry. He got a job at a lumber yard, stacking the very timber he used to order by the ton. The pay was minimum wage. The work was brutal on his aging back, but it was honest. For the first time in his life, Adrian earned a paycheck that didn't have a lie attached to it. 6 months after his release, on a Sunday, Adrian took 3 different buses to get to the north side of Seattle. He didn't know why he was doing it. It was a form of self-flagellation, perhaps, a need to see the monument of his failure. He got off the bus at the corner of Oakwood Drive. The neighborhood was exactly as he remembered it. The manicured lawns, the smell of wood smoke, the silence of wealth. He felt like an intruder in his own memory. He tightened his cheap canvas jacket around his chest and began to walk. He stopped in front of number 42. The house had changed. The stark, modern black trim he had insisted on was gone, painted a warm, inviting sage green. The severe, gravel landscaping he had designed, minimalist chic, he had called it, had been dug up. In its place was a garden, a chaotic, beautiful explosion of life. Wildflowers, rhododendrons, and hydrangeas spilled over the retaining walls. It was lush, it was messy, it was alive. Adrian stood on the sidewalk, his hands in his pockets, staring at the transformation. "Can I help you?" A woman's voice startled him. He looked up. A young mother, maybe 30, was standing on the porch, holding a toddler on her hip. She looked at Adrian with suspicion. He couldn't blame her. He looked like a drifter. I used to live here," Adrian said, his voice raspy. "A long time ago." The woman's expression softened slightly. "Oh, you're the architect, the one who built it." "I designed the shell," Adrian corrected her softly. "I didn't build the home." The woman shifted the baby to her other hip. "Well, it's a beautiful structure. Good bones. But we had to change the garden. The previous owner left the soil in terrible condition. Too much gravel, not enough nutrients." The previous owner, Adrian trailed off. He knew she meant him. "But the woman who sold it to us," the young mother continued, "she left us a binder. It was weird, actually. It was full of instructions on how to fix the soil, how to plant the hydrangeas so they'd get the morning sun but not the afternoon heat. She even left a note saying, 'This house needs warmth, not just heat.'" Adrian felt a lump form in his throat. Even in her absence, even after she had dismantled his life, Sarah had tried to fix the soil. She had left instructions on how to make things grow where he had only laid concrete. "She sounded like a nice lady," the woman said. "Did you know her?" Adrian looked at the vibrant purple hydrangeas swaying in the wind. He thought about the diamond earrings sitting in an evidence locker. He thought about the vanilla candles and the lies. He thought about the woman who had quietly, patiently measured his worth and found it lacking. "No," Adrian whispered, tears prickling his eyes for the first time in years. "I didn't know her. I lived with her for 15 years, but I never really knew her at all." He tipped his head to the woman. "Enjoy the house. It finally has a heart." Adrian turned and walked away. He didn't look back. The rain began to fall, a cold, cleansing drizzle. He walked to the bus stop, sat on the wet bench, and waited for the number 42 bus to take him back to his small, rented room in Tacoma. He had nothing in his pockets but a bus pass and a few crumpled dollars. He was poor. He was alone. But as the bus pulled up, Adrian realized something profound. The anxiety was gone. The constant need to hide his phone, to check his rearview mirror, to remember which lie he had told to whom. It was all gone. He boarded the bus and sat by the window. As the city of Seattle blurred past him, Adrian Sterling finally slept. And that is the story of Adrian Sterling. He was a man who thought he was playing a game of chess, only to realize he was playing against a grandmaster who had memorized every move before he even sat down. Sarah didn't just leave him. She held a mirror up to his soul and forced him to look. She proved that the most dangerous person in the room isn't the one shouting or making demands. It's the one who is quietly taking notes. Adrian lost his fortune, his reputation, and his freedom. But in the end, he gained the one thing he never had: the truth. He learned, too late, that you can build the most beautiful house in the world, but if the foundation is built on lies, it will eventually collapse on top of you. So what do you think? Did Sarah go too far by sending him to prison, or did Adrian get exactly what he deserved? I want to know your verdict. If you think justice was served, hit that like button. If you think Sarah was too ruthless, let me know in the comments below. And if you want more stories about karma, betrayal, and the dark side of human nature, make sure to subscribe and turn on notifications. I'll see you in the next video.